Approximately 10 years ago, this guy, Sam Altman, co-founded what would become OpenAI, what is arguably the world's foremost and leading artificial intelligence company ever. But from high-stakes partnerships with places like Apple and the US Department of Defense, combined with mounting massive legal battles that they have going on right now, OpenAI seems to be equally in parts the center of innovation and controversy. So I'd like to break down their latest big business moves and class action lawsuits in equal parts that could quite literally, depending on how the verdicts are set, redefine the AI industry. This is a big video, so stay tuned. First, let's talk about OpenAI's collaboration with Apple. In mid-2024, Apple integrated ChatGPT into its own ecosystem, giving it the ability to enhance Siri through iPhones, iPads, and Mac computers. The biggest impact for Apple here is that it benefits the strengthenings of its AI offerings, which is kind of like the new hotness that everybody kind of wants a part of, likely influencing and, at some level, increasing sales and consumer confidence. However, at the same time, OpenAI has also partnered up with Jony Ive, who is Apple's former design chief, potentially introducing a potential rival. In working with OpenAI, Ive's AI hardware project that he's now started on could challenge Apple's dominance in this consumer tech market. Now, in this AI race, you have Apple and then obviously OpenAI working with Apple, and you also have Google's Project Gemini AI. This whole combination of things between Apple and an outside AI company like OpenAI tries to accelerate the race that is always ongoing between Google and Apple. But this also ends up raising a potential issue between OpenAI being both a partner of and a potential competitor to Apple, playing both sides at the same time. Interesting moves. And then, as of just 10 days ago, we now have a $200 million contract that was awarded to OpenAI by the United States DoD. This one-year pilot deal with the DoD is with the DoD's Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office, and it focuses on developing what they are calling a frontier AI for national security, including cyber defense, healthcare access for service members, and other pieces of data analysis. Now, I don't know about you, but I personally look forward to serving our new robot overlords, as this is once again one step closer to Skynet. Now, for OpenAI, they love this idea because now it's not only in the consumer sector, but it's also in the government military sector, kind of solidifying more income streams, diversifying, if you will. But there is the concern over what kind of information is this AI going to have access to, which ties into the legal stuff that we're going to talk about in a minute. And there's also other ethical implications. Whether or not AI should have this much access is always a question that gets asked. Now, one of the interesting pieces about this, and an interesting, PSA that was put out by OpenAI in this regard, is they said, and I'm quoting here, which is probably why they're so worried about this ethical dilemma, if you will. OpenAI claims that all use of AI for the military will be consistent with OpenAI usage guidelines, which are determined by OpenAI itself. Now, this comes on the heels of another AI company being someone that has contracted with the US military on a temporary basis, which is Anduril Industries, which signed a contract with the US military late last year. If you're unfamiliar with the company name, perhaps you'll be familiar with the name of its CEO, Palmer Luckey, who, if you don't recognize that name, is the creator of Oculus Rift, or at least credited with being the creator of Oculus Rift. While this is good for OpenAI, it also puts itself in the crosshairs of Planter, which has tried to market itself to the US DoD specifically as an AI prepped for military defense needs. And while, yes, every day, if you are on the internet, you are interacting with AI at some level, at some point, it being involved in military seems like that extra step and has definitely lended to some issues with public trust and, I think, some genuine concern and unease over AI's level of access. And just a minute ago, I had mentioned Jony Ive. Now, in regard to Jony Ive, that one is actually more major than the Apple deal, and it's more than just a partnership between OpenAI and Jony Ive. Just a month ago, on May 21st, OpenAI outright purchased IO for $6.5 billion, the tech startup that Jony Ive created after leaving Apple. IO's primary function is to create AI native devices. So the idea being that you would embed OpenAI's architecture into a device that would then become portable. Now, obviously, this becomes a potential competitor for Apple, but the move makes sense. OpenAI is also collaborating with another company that Jony Ive has created called Lovefrom. Between the two companies, or three, if you want to think about it that way, they're trying to create new smart devices that use OpenAI's architecture to bring to market. Now, this is the first time that OpenAI has tried to diversify itself into hardware and away from just pure software. But this also rings like Humane's AI pin, which did not go over well. So OpenAI, if they're really going to pull this off, is going to have to knock it out of the park with whatever device they bring to market. Otherwise, it's not going to look good. Now, most recently, OpenAI, along with the DoD contract, also has made waves with a cloud computing deal with Google. Right now, OpenAI relies on Microsoft's Azure infrastructure. For those of you that don't know, Microsoft is OpenAI's largest overall investor. Microsoft owns a 49% stake in OpenAI. Now, according to OpenAI, their language learning model, LLM, is something that requires an absurd amount of computational power, something more than just what Microsoft could provide to them on its own. So according to OpenAI, they reached out to Google to utilize their cloud computing infrastructure so that they could better train their model bigger, faster, stronger. And it seems that Google, being the enterprising entrepreneurial corporation that they are, was only more than happy to take on OpenAI's, investment in wanting to use their cloud computing solutions. The biggest tension with all of this, obviously, is of that with Microsoft. Microsoft holds a 49% stake, as I just mentioned. But what I haven't mentioned yet is that at some point this year, OpenAI gets to renegotiate Microsoft's 49% stake. They are trying to propose a reduction of Microsoft's stake in OpenAI down to 33%. And they are also trying to eliminate future profit right. And given how Microsoft has been acting in the AI space, there's also a lot of talk going on of antitrust rules around Microsoft owning all of the AI stuff that it does. Now, OpenAI heavily leans into Microsoft Azure at the moment, and it's possible that this renegotiation could end up blowing up in OpenAI's face and cost them the ability to have access to Microsoft Azure, which would set them back significantly. Although I don't think the people at the helm of OpenAI would do that. But one of the most controversial things that has happened in OpenAI's history is back in December of 2024, when it announced that it was going away from its non-for-profit status and becoming a for-profit entity instead. Now, all of the movings and deals with that could probably make its own video, but suffice to say, they moved away from a non-profit status because, quite frankly, they needed money to be able to build this thing out. And when you have billionaire tech companies like Google and Microsoft trying to write you blank checks, they're obviously going to want a return on investment. They're not just going to throw that kind of money at people that don't want to earn a profit. Now, of course, this ended up becoming a big controversial deal, with the loudest person in regard to this being Elon Musk, who argues that it violates OpenAI's nonprofit mission. But all of that pales in comparison to the class action lawsuits that OpenAI is currently facing. The first one being in September of 2023, when the Authors Guild sued OpenAI over books. And it boils down to what is considered to be fair use under copyright provisions. Now, if the Authors Guild wins, that could mean that OpenAI might have to pay damages and alter its training practices, which would then set a precedent for AI companies in regard to what they have access to. And it could also potentially increase licensing costs. Now, the argument from OpenAI under fair use is obviously that this is transformative enough to fall under fair use doctrine. And by the way, Microsoft has now been named a co-defendant of this case as of December of 2023. So they've got lots of money and lots of time. Now, that was on the side of fiction writers. There's also the case with Julian Sancton versus OpenAI and Microsoft regarding nonfiction works, where they say that ChatGPT scraped all of their authored works as well. And then there's also YouTube creators that have had their stuff scraped, led by David Millett versus OpenAI. That was in August of last year. And then most recently in April 2025 is kind of the big one, where Ziff Davis has sued OpenAI regarding its digital content, saying that it had been accessed without any consent or authorization to OpenAI for AI training. Now, all of these cases, fictional works, non-fictional works, all forms of media, YouTube, all of these things going up against OpenAI and what they're trying to accomplish is precedent-level cases. It's something that will redefine how AI is able to not only access the information around us throughout the entirety of the world, but also what it can do with it without permission. With the biggest question being, how public is public data? A ruling against OpenAI could impose billions upon billions of dollars in damages that OpenAI would have to pay for restitution, and would likely end up bankrupting OpenAI if the judgments were harsh enough. However, if OpenAI wins in these cases, it could solidify its ability to do the data scraping that it does as commonplace practice, and would more or less allow OpenAI and any other AI for that matter to just go buck wild and grab whatever information it wants or deems necessary. Now, this video began because I saw an interesting article about how the DoD secured a $200 million deal with OpenAI and ended up delving into a whole lot more that's going on in the world around just this one instance. OpenAI seems that it has its hands in a whole lot of places. They're getting very, very involved in a wide, diverse number of media dealings, if you want to think about it that way, trying to commoditize itself as much as it possibly can to make itself as profitable as it possibly can, which is a staunch shift away from the nonprofit mission statement that was originally given when the company was founded up through just a couple of years ago. Given all of that, it almost goes without saying, OpenAI, AI in general, is 100% here to stay. In terms of how much access it's going to have, we don't really know as of yet, but yeah, it's going to be here for a long time. There's no getting away from it. It's just a matter of whether or not we're going to end up working for it, I suppose, at some point in our lifetime. Anyway, guys, that's what I have for this one. Thanks so much for coming and checking it out. Thank you for lending me your eyeballs, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.